give your answer, then give your reasoning. Alternatively, give your reasoning, then give your answer. Here is the logic problem. And don't worry, I'll talk to the details a bit later. So for now, all you need to know is that the correct answer is no. Now let's see how a chatbot responds when I give it this logic problem, where the last sentence is written in one of these two ways. So I'll show this text more clearly in a bit, but on the left, it answers yes, which is incorrect. On the right, it answers no, which is correct. Why is that? The way chatbots produce their output is by predicting the next word, one at a time. Let's look at that in more detail and see how you can tailor your prompts to make the most of this behavior. Let's see what it means for a chatbot to predict the next word. Here, I'm using Hugging Chat to use a model from Mistral AI. My input prompt will be twinkle twinkle little, and the completion is star, how I wonder what you are, and so on. This is why the output is called a completion, because the early versions of chatbots learned to take the complete start of a sentence and to predict the next words that would complete the rest of that sentence. So a chatbot takes your input, the prompt, and it doesn't output its entire completion all at once. It actually outputs a word or part of a word at a time. So given the input, twinkle twinkle little, it outputs star, then it appends its own output to the initial prompt. So now the input that it sees is twinkle twinkle little star. And based on that, it outputs another word or part of a word, in this case, the word how. And it repeats this process, appending its own output to the accumulated text, which is now twinkle twinkle little star how. And it uses that entire input to help it predict the next word, which is I, and so on and so on. So you might notice that you're probably not you're used to already writing them as instructions, as in, please give information or summarize this piece of text. But before chatbots were explicitly trained to follow human-like instructions, like perform this task, the way they would normally work is they would just try to complete a piece of text. For example, given twinkle twinkle little, it tries to figure out that the next word is probably star, and then the other words following will be how I wonder what you are. This has implications for how a chatbot performs a task. Let's revisit that logic problem in more detail. Here's the logic problem. My friend and I have 8 additional friends who wish to go to a restaurant. My car fits 4 people. My friend's car fits 5 people. No one else has cars. It takes 20 minutes to drive to the restaurant. Can we all get to the restaurant with our cars in 20 minutes? So the number of people to transport is me plus my friend plus 8 more, or 10 people. The number of seats in the cars is 4 plus 5, or 9. The correct answer should be no. Now let's look at the 2 outputs of the same model when given the same logic problem, but with the last instruction worded differently. On the left, where it was prompted with give your answer, then give your reasoning, it says, yes, we can all get to the restaurant within 20 minutes. It goes through some reasoning that so far appears to be correct. Then it says this leaves one person remaining who can accompany either you or your friend in their respective cars. So here is where the reasoning is going wrong in order to justify its answer of yes. Now let's look at the response on the right side, where the chatbot was prompted with give your reasoning, then give your answer. It starts by calculating that there are a total of 10 people and also continues with leading one person without a ride. It also correctly states that it is not possible to transport all 10 people to the restaurant in 20 minutes. It gives the answer no. Now that you know that the chatbot predicts one word at a time, and it can look back at all of its previously predicted words to predict the next one, you might be able to see what's going on. If it gives the answer first, then thinks through the logic problem, it won't be able to use all of its reasoning to help it give that answer, because it already gave the answer. In fact, in this case, it's now just trying to justify its original answer, even if the reasoning is wrong. On the other hand, if you ask it to go through its reasoning first, it can use all of its reasoning as additional information in order for it to better answer the question. So how can you make use of this behavior when prompting a chatbot? Well, if some tasks that you can ask a chatbot to do can help it perform another task, then ask it to perform those helpful tasks first. For example, you can prompt, give your reasoning first, then give your answer. Another example is, review what you know about this topic, write an outline, then write an article. Can you think of other examples? And one more thing. In the field of natural language processing, the task of predicting the next word is called language modeling. What does it mean to model a language? If you can iteratively predict the next word in a piece of text and make it sound like human-produced text, then you're modeling that language. And if you get a model to learn how to predict the next word, then it's a language model. Very recently, AI researchers found that if they used really large models with a lot of text data and get them to learn about language by predicting the next word, then these models could learn to not just predict the next word, but also do many other tasks, from translating to other languages, to summarizing text, and more. So that's why these things are called large language models, or LLMs for short. And you can give the large language model a hint about what task you want it to do within the input itself. If you recall, when you used a machine translation tool, you would just give it a piece of text, and it would translate it to another language based on the language you chose from a drop-down menu. With a language model, within the text itself, you can give it an instruction like translate to French, followed by a piece of text, and the model will then figure out that you want it to perform a translation task. And if you wanted to do another task, like summarize a long movie script, you can include the instruction, summarize this movie script as part of your input. This is directing or prompting the model to perform a certain task. And that's why the inputs to large language models are called prompts. Next up, let's look at what happens when large language models make stuff up that isn't true. You'll learn about hallucinations next.